The metal collar around Nari's neck burned like fire. It had burned for so long that she could barely remember what it felt like to be without pain. She sat in the cage, her knees pulled up to her chest, staring at nothing. The sounds of the auction hall echoed around her. Voices shouting, aliens laughing, the clinking of credits changing hands. She was being sold again. The 7th time in 2 years. Nari belonged to a species called the Veilith. Her people had crystalline markings on their skin that glowed softly in the dark. They could speak with their minds, touching thoughts and feelings across great distances. Or at least they used to. The neural collar around her neck made sure she couldn't do that anymore. It blocked her telepathy and sent waves of pain through her skull every few hours, just to remind her that she was property now. The Dominion Empire had destroyed her world 3 cycles ago. She still remembered the ships descending from the sky, the bright explosions, the screaming. She remembered her mother pushing her into a shelter, telling her to hide. She remembered the shelter door being torn open, rough hands dragging her out. She remembered watching the soldiers kill her family while she screamed. Then the screaming stopped. After the first few owners, after the beatings and the starvation and the things she tried hard not to remember, the screaming stopped. The fighting stopped. Everything stopped. Now she just existed, moving from cage to cage, from owner to owner, waiting for it to finally end. Next lot, the auctioneer's voice boomed across the hall. 1 female Veilith, young, mostly intact. Telepathic abilities suppressed. Starting bid at 3,000 credits. Nari didn't look up. She'd learned not to make eye contact. Eye contact made them angry. It made them think you still had spirit, still had fight. And when they thought that, they tried to break you all over again. The bidding started. Nari heard the numbers rising. She wondered what kind of owner would buy her this time. Would it be a Korthax warrior who would use her as a sparring target? A Civen merchant who would lock her in a display case? Maybe one of the shadow dealers who took slaves to unknown places. Places people whispered about in fear. She didn't care anymore. It didn't matter. 3,500. 4,000. 4,200. The voices blurred together. Nari closed her eyes. In her mind, she tried to remember her home. The crystal gardens where the flowers sang in the wind. The great halls where her people gathered to share thoughts and dreams. Her little brother's laugh. Her mother's gentle mental touch, like a warm blanket around her mind. But the memories were fading. Every day they got a little more distant, a little less real. Soon, she thought, there would be nothing left of who she used to be. 7,000 credits. The new voice cut through the noise. It was different from the others. Softer. Uncertain. Nari opened her eyes slightly and looked toward the bidding floor. A human stood there. Nari had seen humans before. They were a newer species in the galaxy, barely tolerated by the older civilizations. Most aliens considered them primitive and reckless. They were shorter than most species, without natural weapons or armor, without special abilities. They looked weak. This human was a male, she thought. He had dark hair and wore the simple clothes of a cargo trader. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot, his jaw clenched tight. 7,000 credits, the auctioneer repeated. Do I hear 7,500? A Korthax warrior in the front row raised his clawed hand. 7,500! The human's hands curled into fists. He seemed to be arguing with himself, his face showing anger and something else. Something Nari couldn't quite identify because she hadn't seen it in so long. It looked like sadness. 8,000, the human shouted. The hall went quiet for a moment. 8,000 credits was a lot of money for a suppressed Veilith. Most bidders started dropping out at that price. The Korthax warrior growled. 8,500. The human pulled out a datapad, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Nari watched him check something, saw his face go pale. He was looking at his account balance, she realized. He was looking at all the money he had. He looked up at her cage. Their eyes met for just a second. Nari saw something in his eyes that made her chest hurt in a strange way. It wasn't the look of someone seeing property. It wasn't the look of someone seeing a thing to be used. It was the look of someone seeing another person suffering and being unable to turn away. 9,000 credits, the human said quietly. That's everything I have. The auctioneer grinned, showing too many teeth. 9,000. Do I hear 9,500? The Korthax warrior stared at the human, then snorted and waved his hand dismissively. Crazy human. Not worth it. He stomped away. 9,000 going once. Going twice. Sold to the human. The human closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He looked like someone who had just made either the best or worst decision of his life, and wasn't sure which. Nari felt nothing. Another owner. That's all this was. Humans were known for being unpredictable, but they could be cruel too. Every species could be cruel. She'd learned that lesson well. 2 guards unlocked her cage and dragged her out. Her legs barely worked after sitting for so long. They pulled her across the floor toward the human. She kept her eyes down, her body tense, waiting for a blow that always came when she moved too slowly. But the blow didn't come. "Easy," the human's voice said softly. "I've got her. You can let go now." The guards laughed. "Your problem now, human. Good luck. This one's broken pretty well, but they sometimes remember they have teeth." They shoved Nari forward. She stumbled and fell to her knees in front of the human. She stayed down, waiting. This was usually when the new owner established dominance, showed her who was in control. Instead, she felt gentle hands on her shoulders. "Can you stand?" the human asked quietly. Nari didn't understand. Was this a trick, a test? She slowly pushed herself to her feet, her legs shaking. The human didn't grab her, didn't chain her. He just stood there looking at her with those sad, angry eyes. "My name is Jihu," he said. "I have a ship. Let's get you out of here." He turned and started walking toward the exit. After a moment, Nari followed. She had no choice. She was his property now. But as they left the auction hall, as the noise and the lights faded behind them, Nari felt something strange stirring in her chest, something she'd thought was dead forever. It was small and fragile, barely more than a whisper, but it felt almost like hope. The ship was called the Hanol's Wing. It was small and old, the kind of cargo freighter that independent traders used to haul goods from station to station. The paint on the outside was faded and patched in several places. But as Jihu led Nari through the airlock, she noticed that everything inside was clean and well-maintained. "Wait here," Jihu said, gesturing to a seat near the entrance. "I need to get something." Nari sat down carefully, her muscles tense. She watched Jihu disappear down a corridor. This was usually when it started. The new owner would leave for a moment, then come back with chains or a shock stick or worse. She'd learned to prepare herself for that moment, to make her mind go somewhere else so it hurt less. But when Jihu came back, he was carrying a small black device and a medical kit. No chains, no weapons. He knelt down in front of her, holding up the black device. "This is a collar decoder. I bought it from a tech dealer. It should be able to remove your neural suppressor without causing damage." He paused. "It might hurt. I'm sorry about that, but I need to get that thing off you." Nari stared at him. Was he serious? Owners didn't remove the collars. The collars were how they kept slaves controlled. Without it, she might be able to use her telepathy again. She might be able to fight back unless this was a game. Some owners liked games. Jihu seemed to read the confusion on her face. "I know you don't trust me. That's okay. You don't have to. But I'm going to remove this collar, and then I'm going to show you to a private cabin where you can rest. No locks on the door from the outside. You can leave whenever you want." He smiled sadly. "Though we're in space right now, so maybe wait until we dock somewhere." He reached toward her neck with the decoder. Nari flinched but held still. What choice did she have? The decoder beeped as Jihu pressed it against the collar. There was a clicking sound, then a high-pitched whine. The pain in Nari's head suddenly got worse. Much worse, like someone driving hot needles through her skull. She gasped and squeezed her eyes shut. "Almost there," Jihu said softly. "Just a few more seconds." Then the collar clicked open and fell away. The relief was so sudden and so intense that Nari collapsed forward. The constant burning pain that had lived in her head for 2 years was gone. Just gone. She could feel her telepathic senses stirring. Weak and damaged, but there. Her mind could reach out again, could touch the world around her. She could feel Jihu's emotions, concern, guilt, sadness, determination, but no cruelty. No hunger for power, no dark pleasure in causing pain. It confused her so much that she started to cry. "Hey, it's okay," Jihu said. He didn't touch her, just stayed kneeling nearby. "You're safe now. I promise." Those words. How many times had she heard those words? They were always lies, but his emotions didn't feel like lies. Jihu helped her stand and guided her to a small cabin. It had a bed, a small bathroom, and a storage locker. Simple but clean. "This is yours," Jihu said. "There's a lock on the inside if you want privacy." The intercom button is here if you need anything. I'll bring you some food in a bit." He left and the door closed behind him. Nari stood in the middle of the cabin for a long time, not sure what to do. This had to be a trick, had to be. She went to the door and found the inside locked just like he said. She pressed it and the door sealed with a solid click. She was locked in, but she had been the one to lock it. That was new. Nari sat on the bed. It was soft. Softer than anything she'd slept on in years. She lay down slowly, half expecting an alarm to sound, for someone to burst in and drag her out for daring to use an owner's furniture. Nothing happened. She closed her eyes. Her telepathy was still weak, but she could sense the ship around her. There were 3 living beings aboard. Jihu was in the cockpit. There was another human with him talking quickly. And there was something else, something digital. A ship AI, maybe? She focused on Jihu's mind, reaching out carefully. If he felt her mental touch, he didn't show it. She sensed his surface thoughts. He was worried about money. The 9,000 credits he'd spent on her was everything he'd saved for the past year. His co-pilot was yelling at him for being an idiot. "You can't save everyone, Jihu," the other voice said. "What are we supposed to do now? We needed that money for the ship repairs." "I know, Doyen, I know." Jihu sounded tired. "But I couldn't just—" "Did you see her? Did you see what they'd done to her?" "I saw, but we can't fix the galaxy. We're just 2 guys with a cargo ship. Maybe. But we can fix this. We can help her." Doyen sighed loudly. "You're an idiot. A good person, but an idiot." "Probably." Nari pulled her mind back. She didn't understand. She didn't understand any of this. Why would someone spend all their money on a slave just to free them? What did Jihu want? Everyone wanted something. She was too tired to figure it out. For the first time in years, the pain in her head was gone. Her body was exhausted, but it was the exhaustion of relief, not suffering. She fell asleep. When she woke up, there was a tray of food outside her door. She'd heard the quiet beep of the intercom, but had been too deeply asleep to respond. The food was simple: rice, vegetables, some kind of protein. But it was warm and it smelled good. There was also a note written on actual paper: "Eat as much as you want. There's more if you're still hungry. No rush on anything. Rest as long as you need." Jihu Nari ate slowly. Her stomach wasn't used to real food anymore. For 2 years she'd eaten scraps, tasteless nutrition paste, whatever the owners felt like giving her. This was real food. Prepared food. Given freely, she didn't understand. Days passed. Jihu kept his word. He brought food 3 times a day, always leaving it outside her door. He never tried to come in. Sometimes he would talk to her through the intercom, telling her about the ship, about where they were going, about nothing important. Just talking like she was a person worth talking to. Nari listened but didn't respond. She still didn't trust this. Couldn't trust it. On the 5th day, her curiosity finally won. She unlocked her door and stepped out into the corridor. She could hear voices from the cockpit. Jihu and Doyen were arguing about the best route to avoid Dominion patrols. She walked quietly to the cockpit door and looked in. Jihu was in the pilot's seat studying a star chart. Doyen was beside him, a young human with bright eyes and quick gestures. Jihu noticed her and smiled. "Hey, you're up. How are you feeling?" "Why?" Nari asked. Her voice was rough from not using it. "Why what? Why did you buy me? What do you want?" Jihu turned the chair to face her fully. "I don't want anything from you, Nari. Everyone wants something. I just want you to be okay." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. What was happening at that auction was wrong. I couldn't stop it all, but I could stop it for you. So I did. That's not a reason. That's not how the galaxy works. Jihu shrugged. Maybe it should work that way. Humans have a saying, "Be the change you want to see." Someone said that a long time ago on Earth. It stuck with us. Nari stared at him, searching for the lie, the hidden meaning. But all she felt from his mind was sincerity. "I don't understand humans," she said quietly. Jihu laughed. "Most species say that. Look, Nari, you don't owe me anything. When we get to the next station, I can help you get settled somewhere safe, or you can stay on the ship if you want. Your choice. But whatever you decide, you're not property anymore. You're free." Free. Nari had forgotten what that word meant. She felt something crack inside her chest, something that had been frozen and dead for so long. And for the second time since meeting this strange human, she started to cry. This time, when Jihu offered her a hand, she took it. 3 weeks after Jihu bought her freedom, Nari found herself in the cargo bay organizing supply crates. She didn't have to do this. Jihu had made that clear a dozen times. But sitting in her cabin doing nothing made her feel useless. And after years of being treated as less than nothing, being useful felt important. "You don't have to do that," Doyen said, walking past with a toolbox. He said it every time he saw her working, but there was no anger in it. "Just statement of fact." "I know," Nari replied. She always gave the same answer. Doyen grinned. "Jihu's rubbing off on you. Stubborn for no good reason." But he said it warmly, and Nari understood now that this was how Doyen showed affection. Through teasing, she was learning about humans. They were strange creatures. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no telepathy. They weren't particularly strong or fast compared to most species in the galaxy. But they had something else. Something that made them different. They cared. Even when it hurt them to care. Even when it cost them everything, they cared. Jihu had spent his entire savings to free her. Now he was taking odd jobs. Dangerous cargo runs that paid well but came with risks. When Nari had found out, she'd been horrified. He was risking his life because of her. "I was taking risky jobs before you came aboard," Jihu had said with a shrug. "At least now I have a good reason for needing the money. The ship needs repairs and we all need to eat." That was another human thing Nari learned. They were very good at pretending everything was fine even when it wasn't. The ship's AI bomb chimed in through the speakers. "Jihu requests your presence in the cockpit, Nari." Nari put down the crate she was holding and made her way forward. Over the past weeks, her strength had returned. Real food and rest had healed her body. Her telepathy was still weak, damaged by years of suppression, but it was coming back slowly. She found Jihu studying a data screen, his expression serious. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Maybe nothing. Maybe something." He gestured for her to sit. "I've been asking around, following rumors. About your people." "The Valith," Nari's heart jumped. "What did you find?" "There's talk of a refugee group. Survivors hiding in the outer rim, on an asteroid colony called Serum Station. It might be nothing. These rumors are usually just stories, but..." He looked at her carefully. "But if it's real, would you want to go there?" Nari couldn't breathe for a moment. Other Valith. Other survivors. She'd thought she was alone, that everyone else was dead or scattered so far across the galaxy that she'd never find them. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want to go," Jihu nodded. "Then we go." "But Nari, the outer rim is dangerous. It's outside Dominion space, but that also means it's outside any law. Pirates, mercenaries, criminals. If this is a trap, I don't care," Nari said firmly. "Even if it's a trap. Even if it's dangerous. I have to know." Something in Jihu's expression softened. "Okay, we leave in an hour." The journey to the outer rim took 6 days. Jihu navigated carefully, avoiding the main shipping routes where Dominion patrols might scan them. Nari spent the time trying to remember everything she could about her people, about their culture and customs. Would the survivors remember her? Would they accept her after everything that had happened to her? Would they see her as one of them, or as something broken and used up? "Stop thinking so loud," Doyen said one evening in the galley. "I'm not even telepathic and I can feel your anxiety from here." "I'm scared," Nari admitted. "Of what?" "Of them not being there. Of them being there but not wanting me. Of..." She trailed off. Doyen sat down across from her. "Look, I don't know anything about Valith culture, but I know something about finding your people after being lost. My family thought I died in a shuttle accident when I was young. When I finally made it back home 3 years later, I was so scared they wouldn't recognize me, that I'd changed too much. What happened?" My mom took one look at me and burst into tears. Then she hit me for making her worry. Then she hugged me for about 3 hours. Doyen smiled at the memory. "What I'm saying is, your people will just be glad you're alive. The rest you can figure out together." Nari wanted to believe that. She really did. They reached Serum Station on the 6th day. It was a small asteroid colony, barely a dot on the navigation charts, the kind of place people went when they wanted to disappear. Jihu docked the ship carefully and turned to Nari. "Ready?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. The station was old and poorly maintained. The corridors were dark and smelled of recycled air and metal. Jihu kept one hand near his weapon as they walked, his eyes scanning for threats. Doyen stayed close to Nari, protective. They found the refugee sector in the lower levels. It was a collection of small rooms and shared spaces. filled with beings from a dozen different species. All of them were running from something or someone, and there, in a corner gathering space, Nari saw them. Valeth. 6 of them gathered around a small heating unit, talking quietly. Their crystalline markings glowed softly in the dim light. One of them was older, with deep blue markings that indicated wisdom and age. Nari's legs stopped working. She just stood there staring, unable to move or speak. The older Valeth looked up. His eyes widened. "By the ancestors," he breathed. "Another survivor." He stood and walked toward her slowly, as if afraid she might disappear. The other Valeth followed, their expressions shocked and hopeful. "I am Haru," the elder said gently. "What is your name, child?" "Nari," she managed to say. I was from the Crystal Gardens region. I know that region. I knew families there." Haru's voice was thick with emotion. We hoped there might be others, but we'd found so few." "How many?" Nari asked. "How many of us are left?" "Here, just us 6. But we've heard of other groups, small clusters scattered across the galaxy, maybe 50, 60 in total, out of millions." The number hit Nari like a physical blow. Out of millions, only 50 or 60 left. Her entire civilization, her culture, her people nearly gone. She felt her knees buckle. Jihu caught her, his hand steady on her arm. Haru looked at Jihu with curiosity. "A human? How did you come to be with our Nari?" "He saved me," Nari said softly. "He bought me at a slave auction and set me free. He brought me here." The other Valeth stirred, their mental voices a soft murmur of surprise and gratitude. Haru studied Jihu for a long moment. "The humans are new to the galaxy," Haru said. "Most elder species dismiss them as primitive. But perhaps the elder species have forgotten what it means to have a heart." He placed his hand over his chest in the traditional Valeth gesture of respect. "Thank you, Jihu of Earth. You have given us a great gift." Jihu looked uncomfortable with the gratitude. "I just did what was right. That is more than most would do." The other Valeth came forward then, and they embraced Nari, their minds touching hers gently. She felt their pain, their loss, their grief, but also their hope, their determination to survive, their love for each other and for their lost home. For the first time in years, Nari wasn't alone. She wept and they wept with her, and Jihu and Doyen stood back quietly, giving them space to grieve and rejoice together. Later, as they sat around the heating unit sharing stories, Haru told them about the other survivors, how they were hiding across the galaxy, afraid to gather because the Dominion still hunted them, how they tried to keep their culture alive, teaching the young ones the old ways even though there was no homeworld to return to. "We need to find them," Nari said suddenly. "All of them. We need to bring our people together." "Too dangerous," one of the younger Valeth said. "The Dominion wants us dead or enslaved. If we gather, we make ourselves a target. Then we need protection." Nari looked at Jihu. "We need help." Jihu met her eyes. She could feel his mind working through the problem, calculating risks and possibilities. Finally, he smiled. "I might know some people who could help. Other humans who won't like hearing about what happened to your people." He pulled out his communication device. "Let me make some calls." Nari felt something growing in her chest, something she hadn't felt since before the Dominion came. It was hope, real hope, and it was growing stronger every moment. Maybe, just maybe, her people had a future after all. The alarm woke everyone on Sarum Station at 3 a.m. station time. Nari jerked awake in the small room she shared with 2 other Valeth, her heart pounding. The alarm meant only one thing. Someone had found them. She ran to the common area and found Jihu already there, fully dressed, checking his weapon. Doyen was at a data terminal, his fingers flying across the controls. "What's happening?" Nari demanded. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, Doyen said grimly. "They're broadcasting Dominion codes, but the ships are unmarked. Bounty hunters, probably." Haru appeared behind Nari, his face pale. "How did they find us?" "Does it matter?" Jihu said. "We need to evacuate now," but it was already too late. The station's communication system crackled to life, and a harsh voice filled the corridors. "Attention Sarum Station. This is Captain Taeyang of the hunter ship Crimson Dagger. We know you're harboring Valeth refugees. Surrender them to us and the rest of you can live. Resist and we destroy the entire station. You have 10 minutes to decide." Nari's blood went cold. Taeyang. She'd heard that name before, whispered in fear at the slave markets. He was a human, but one who had turned his back on his own people's values. He hunted for the highest bidder, and the Dominion paid well for Valeth. "We have to run," one of the younger Valeth said, his voice shaking. "Hide somewhere else?" "Where?" Haru asked sadly. "We've been running for 3 years. There's nowhere left to hide." Jihu's jaw clenched. Nari could feel his mind racing, considering and discarding options. The Hanul's wing could maybe evacuate the 6 Valeth, but not all the other refugees on the station, and Taeyang's ships would catch them before they could jump to hyperspace. "No," Jihu said quietly. Everyone looked at him. "No more running," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "No more hiding. This ends here." "Jihu, there are 3 warships out there," Doyen said. "We have 1 cargo freighter with light defensive guns. The math doesn't work. Then we change the math." Jihu pulled out his communication device. "Boom, open a channel. Broadcast frequency. Every frequency. I want everyone in range to hear this." "Jihu, what are you doing?" Nari asked. He looked at her and his eyes were filled with quiet fury. "Something I should have done from the beginning. I'm telling the truth." The communication link opened. Jihu took a breath and began to speak. "My name is Jihu, captain of the Hanul's wing. I'm broadcasting this message to anyone who can hear it. 3 years ago, the Dominion Empire invaded the Valeth homeworld. They called it a military action. They said the Valeth were a threat. They lied." He pulled up images on his datapad and transmitted them. Images of Nari's scars. Images of the neural collar. Images of Valeth being sold at slave markets. The Dominion didn't invade for security. They invaded for profit. They murdered millions and enslaved the survivors. They're doing it right now. There are bounty hunters outside this station ready to capture the last few Valeth refugees, so the Dominion can sell them, or experiment on them, or worse. Nari watched the other refugees gathering, listening. Some were recording the broadcast on their own devices. Jihu's voice grew harder. "I'm human. My people are new to the galaxy. We're not the strongest or the smartest, but we know something that you've all forgotten. We know that slavery is evil. We know that genocide is wrong. We know that there are some things worth fighting for, even when the odds are bad." He transmitted more images. Images of Earth's history. The wars, the struggles, the long path to becoming better. Humanity almost destroyed itself over these questions. We fought wars, we made mistakes, we did terrible things. But we learned. We learned that every sentient being has value. That freedom isn't something you grant or take away. It's something everyone deserves just by being alive. Doyen was staring at his friend with wide eyes. Nari felt tears on her cheeks. "So here's my message," Jihu said. "To any human in range, there are people here who need help. I know we're supposed to stay out of galactic politics. I know we're supposed to be quiet and not make waves. But I'm done with that. If you're done with that too, then come. Help us stand against this," he paused. "And to the Dominion and their dogs, we're not surrendering. You want these people. You come through us first." He ended the transmission. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Doyen started laughing, a slightly hysterical sound. "Well," Doyen said, "we're definitely dead now. But at least we'll die with style." Nari grabbed Jihu's arm. "What have you done?" "Now they'll definitely attack." "Maybe," Jihu said. "Or maybe someone will hear. Maybe someone will care." The station's communication system crackled again. Taeyang's voice, now angry. "Brave speech, little human. But speeches don't stop missiles. Last chance. Surrender the Valeth." "Go to hell," Jihu replied calmly. "Your funeral." On the sensors, the 3 hunter ships began to move toward the station, weapons powering up. Jihu, Doyen, and Nari ran for the Hanul's wing. If they were going to die, they'd die fighting. The ship's weapons were weak, but maybe they could buy time for others to escape. They were halfway to the docking bay when Bomb's voice came through the intercom, sounding oddly excited for an AI. "Captain, you need to see this. I'm kinda busy, Bomb. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. 32 ships just entered the system. Correction, 48 ships. Correction, 79 ships." Jihu stopped running. "What?" They made it to the cockpit and stared at the sensor display. Ships were appearing out of hyperspace in groups, surrounding the station. Small traders, mining vessels, a few corporate freighters, even a couple of worn-out patrol ships. All of them were broadcasting the same identification code. Human vessels, they heard. Nari whispered. They heard you and they came. More ships kept arriving. 100. 150. They weren't military ships. Most of them barely had weapons. But they came anyway, moving to position themselves between the station and Taeyang's hunters. A new voice came over the communication channel. A woman's voice, strong and clear. This is Captain Minji of the merchant vessel Good Fortune. We received your message, Jihu. We're here to help. Another voice. Captain Hyun of the mining ship Stone Breaker. Nobody enslaves people. Not while we're watching. More voices joined in, one after another. Traders, miners, independent haulers, people from all over human space who had heard the message and come running. Taeyang's voice cut through the chatter, now uncertain. This is insane. You're all civilians. You're cargo haulers. Captain Minji responded, her voice ice cold. Maybe, but there are a lot of us. And we're all really angry. So here's how this works. You turn around and leave, or you find out what happens when you threaten innocent people in front of humans. On the sensors, even more ships were arriving. 200, 250. They formed a loose sphere around the station, a protective wall of metal and determination. Taeyang tried to sound defiant. The Dominion will hear about this. The Dominion can file a complaint, Minji interrupted. Now get out of our space. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Taeyang's 3 ships began to turn away, their weapons powering down. They jumped to hyperspace and were gone. The communication channel erupted in cheers. Nari couldn't believe what she was seeing. Hundreds of humans, none of them soldiers, had just faced down armed bounty hunters to protect people they'd never met, all because one person asked them to care. Jihu was slumped in his chair, looking stunned. I can't believe that worked. I can, Doyen said quietly. Humans are crazy. It's our best quality. Captain Minji's voice came through again, calmer now. Jihu, I'm sending coordinates for a colony world called New Haven. It's in human-controlled space. The Dominion won't touch it. We're setting up a safe zone for refugees. All refugees. If your friends need a place to go, that's it. Thank you, Jihu managed to say. Thank you all. Thank you for reminding us why we left Earth in the first place, Minji replied. To be better. To do better. We'll escort you to New Haven. No one's getting through this fleet. Nari looked at the sea of ships on the display. All of them here because they chose to care, chose to help. She felt Haru's hand on her shoulder. The old Valeth was weeping. Your people, Haru said softly. Your people are remarkable. Jihu. They're just trying to do the right thing. That's what makes them remarkable. As the fleet began to organize for the journey to New Haven, Nari realized something. The Dominion had tried to break her people. They'd tried to erase them from existence, but they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated what would happen when humans found out about it. And humans, Nari was learning, didn't let that kind of thing slide. New Haven was a young colony world, barely 30 years old. It had blue skies and vast grasslands, with 3 small human settlements connected by transport rails. When the Hanul's wing landed, followed by ships carrying over 40 Valeth refugees gathered from across the sector, Nari stepped onto real soil for the first time in 3 years. She knelt down and pressed her hands against the earth, feeling grass between her fingers. It wasn't her homeworld. It would never be her homeworld. But it was solid ground, under open sky, and she was free. Welcome home, Jihu said softly beside her. The human colonists helped the Valeth settle into a section of land near the eastern settlement. They built temporary shelters and promised to help construct permanent homes. The governor of New Haven, a stern woman named Yunji, made it clear that the refugees were under human protection now. The Dominion won't like this, she told Jihu and Nari during a meeting. We're making an enemy of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. Good, Jihu said simply. They should be everyone's enemy. Governor Yunji smiled grimly. I like your attitude. The Earth Alliance will back us. They've been looking for a cause to unify around. Turns out, Stop Alien Genocide is a pretty good rallying point. News of what happened at Serum Station spread across human space like wildfire. Images of the neural collars, of the slave markets, of the destroyed Valeth homeworld. Humans saw those images and were horrified. Then they were angry. The Earth Alliance passed emergency legislation. Slavery was now classified as a crime against sentience. Any ship, any station, any world that participated in the slave trade was banned from human space. Human traders were authorized to intervene in slave situations and offer sanctuary. Other species watched this development with confusion and concern. The humans were breaking the unspoken rules of galactic politics. They were choosing morality over profit. Most species thought humans were fools, but some species, the ones who had suffered under the Dominion or other empires, started to think maybe the humans had the right idea. 6 months after arriving at New Haven, Nari stood in front of a mirror in her small house. She wore simple clothes in the Valith style, modified slightly for the cooler climate. Her crystalline markings glowed softly. She looked healthy now, strong. She looked like herself again. There was a knock at her door. Jihu stood outside looking nervous. "Is it time?" Nari asked. "If you're ready." They walked together through the settlement. Other Valith joined them as they went, until there were 23 of them, all the survivors who had made it to New Haven. Humans lined the streets, watching quietly, respectfully. They reached the town square where a crowd had gathered. Human reporters were there with cameras broadcasting across the sector. This was going to be seen by billions of beings on hundreds of worlds. Governor Unji stood at a podium. "We gather today for something important. For too long, the galaxy has accepted certain evils as normal. Slavery, exploitation, genocide. We've told ourselves that this is just how things are, that we can't change the bigger picture, that we should mind our own business." She paused, looking at the Valith. "But today we say no more. Today we announce the formation of the Sanctuary Alliance. Any being who is fleeing persecution, who is escaping slavery, who needs protection from those who would harm them, they have a place here. With us," the crowd cheered. Nari felt tears on her face, but they were good tears this time. Yunji continued. "And to lead this initiative, to coordinate rescue operations and refugee settlement, I'm proud to introduce someone who started this movement, someone who saw injustice and refused to look away. Nari of the Valith and Captain Jihu of Earth." Nari stepped forward with Jihu. He looked like he wanted to run away, but she grabbed his hand and held it tight. "Speech!" Doyen called from the crowd, grinning. Jihu shot him a look but took a breath and spoke. "I'm not good at speeches, but I'll say this. The galaxy has been running on fear for too long. Fear of the powerful, fear of making waves, fear of standing up. But you know what's stronger than fear?" He looked at Nari, and she felt his emotions through their linked hands. Pride, determination, hope. "People who care," Jihu said simply. "People who look at suffering and say, 'Not on my watch.' We can't fix everything. We can't save everyone. But we can try. And when we try together, we can do impossible things." The crowd erupted in applause. Nari stepped to the microphone, her voice steady. "The Dominion tried to destroy my people. They tried to make us forget who we were, to break our spirits, to erase us from existence. They almost succeeded." She looked at the other Valith standing with her. "But we survived. And we survived because one human saw a slave in chains and decided that was wrong. Because hundreds of humans heard about our suffering and came to help. Because humans believe that every life has value." She turned to face the cameras directly. "To any Valith still in hiding, still enslaved, still running, we are here. Come home, we will protect you. And to any other species suffering the same fate, we see you. We will fight for you. You are not alone anymore." The cheering was deafening. Over the next year, the Sanctuary Alliance grew. More humans joined. Some non-human species joined too, inspired by the example. They established safe routes through space, secret stations for refugees, and a network of ships ready to respond to distress calls. The Dominion tried to fight back. They put bounties on Jihu and Nari. They sent raiders. They threatened economic sanctions against human space. But humans, once they decided something was right, were remarkably stubborn about it. The Earth Alliance not only refused to back down, they increased support for the Sanctuary Alliance. Human ships started actively seeking out and raiding slave markets, freeing captives and offering them protection. The galaxy discovered that humans, despite being physically weak and technologically behind, were absolutely terrifying when motivated by moral outrage. Nari became the face of the movement. She traveled to human colonies telling her story, coordinating rescue operations, training other refugees to be advocates. Her telepathy, now fully healed, helped her coordinate operations across vast distances. Jihu continued running the Hanul's wing, but now it was equipped with better weapons and shields. funded by donations from across human space. He and Doyen led dozens of successful rescue missions, earning a reputation that made slavers nervous. They became legends, the liberator and the survivor, the human and the Valeth who started a revolution. 2 years after that day in the auction hall, Nari stood on the bridge of a proper rescue ship, the Hope's Light, watching as they approached a Dominion slave facility on the edge of known space. 20 other ships accompanied them, all crewed by volunteers, humans mostly, but also some Valeth who had learned to fight back, and members of other rescued species. Target in range, the pilot said. This is going to be messy. When isn't it? Nari replied calmly. Jihu's face appeared on the communication screen from the Hanul's wing. Ready when you are. Always ready, Nari said, and she meant it. She was no longer the broken, terrified being who had sat in that cage. She was a warrior now, a leader, someone who fought for others the way Jihu had once fought for her. All ships, she commanded. Remember why we're here. There are 300 captives in that facility. 300 people waiting for hope. Let's give it to them. The ships moved forward as one, weapons powered up, shields at maximum. The facility's defenses activated, firing wildly. But the rescue fleet didn't stop. They pushed through, taking hits but never stopping. Because that's what humans had taught the galaxy. When you see someone suffering, you don't calculate the odds or consider the cost. You don't wonder if it's worth it, you just help. The rescue was successful. 300 beings from a dozen species were freed that day. Some would join the Sanctuary Alliance. Some would return to their homeworlds. Some would choose to stay at New Haven or one of the other sanctuary worlds. But all of them would remember that they were saved by people who cared enough to try. That night, back at New Haven, Nari and Jihu sat on a hill overlooking the settlements. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Do you ever regret it? Nari asked. Buying me that day? Starting all of this? Jihu was quiet for a moment. Every time someone gets hurt in a rescue, I wonder if I did the right thing. Every time we lose a ship, I question everything. But then I remember you in that cage. I remember the look in your eyes like you'd given up on everything. And I remember the look in your eyes now. He smiled. No, I don't regret it. Not for a second. Nari leaned her head on his shoulder, something she'd learned humans did with people they trusted. You saved me. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could. We saved each other, Nari said softly, and now we save others. That's the job. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set on a world that had become home. In the settlements below, humans and Valeth and dozens of other species lived and worked together. Children played in the streets, some human, some not, all of them free. The Dominion was still out there. The slave trade still existed. There were still beings suffering across the galaxy, but now there was also hope. Real hope. The kind that came from people who looked at darkness and decided to light a candle. The kind that spread from person to person, species to species, until